Good morning. Today is Wednesday, September 20th, 2023. The Torah describes a system where when soldiers were about to go to war, there were exemptions from serving in the army. We discussed this in the Torah portion of Shoftim a few weeks ago. The Torah says several categories of people who were exempted. And then the Torah says, "V'yasifu hashotrim l'daber ala'am." Then the officers would continue to speak to the people, and they would say, "Umi ha'ish hayarei v'rachai levav." Whoever is afraid and has fear in their heart, yelech v'yashuv leveso, that person should go home. They're exempt, they should go home. They do not serve in the battle. We quoted the famous passage in the Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva says, Hayarei v'racha levav kamashma'o. What does it mean a person is afraid and has fear in their heart? The simple meaning of it, Sheni yachol lama b'kishrei ha'machama v'liris cheresh shlufa. They're afraid to be in battle and have people coming at them with knives and swords and guns and other weapons. It's frightening. So a person who is afraid should not go to battle because it will lower the morale of everyone else. That's what Rabbi Akiva says. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says, Hayarei v'racha levav. What does it mean a person is afraid? Zeu hamisyore men ha'avera shebiyado. This is a person who is afraid of the sins that they are carrying around. And because of the sins that they are carrying around, they are afraid that they will not have enough merit to be saved and survive this battle. That's why they're afraid. And so they also go back home. We discussed this passage in a different context, but for today, let's ask the question, the obvious question, raised by the Kotzk Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotzk, who says, if you're going to tell people that if you're afraid because you committed some sin that may take away some of your merit and you're not going to serve in the war, who's going to be left? Everybody has some sin that they're afraid of. Everyone has some shortcoming, some mistake that they've made, that surely they should worry that because of this mistake, they may not be merit being saved in battle. So it would end up that everyone has such a fear. Bailey Newman explains the answer that the Kotzker gives by telling a story. And the story involves a different Hasidic Rebbe. Before the high holidays, a Chassid, the follower, the disciple of this Rebbe, came to ask his teacher, his Rebbe, he said, how should he prepare himself for the upcoming high holidays? How should he prepare himself for Yom Kippur? And his Rebbe said to him that he should ask forgiveness from everyone that he had wronged, and he should grant forgiveness to anyone who had wronged him. So the man went home, and he did what his Rebbe told him. And he came to his Rebbe a week later, and his Rebbe said to him, but you haven't done it yet. There are still those who you have wronged that you did not forgive. And there are those who wronged you, and you have not yet forgiven them. So the man returns home. He does a full accounting of himself and his actions and his words, and he tries to fulfill what his Rebbe has said, and he comes back to the Rebbe a third time. And the Rebbe says, you still haven't done it. And the man says, I don't understand. What did I leave out? I asked everyone I know for forgiveness, and I in turn forgave every single person who had wronged me this year. Who did I miss? And the Rebbe says to him, my dear friend, did you forgive yourself? Now, for many of us, this is really a supreme struggle. Dr. Leo Jung calls this the most terrifying thing, to accept the totality of ourselves, to harmonize within ourselves not just our light, but our shadows, not just our high moments, but our low moments. It seems that often we can forgive everyone except ourselves. It's as if we sentence ourselves to a life of prison in the pain that we have caused, and we endlessly ask ourselves afterwards, how could I have been so foolish? How could I have made such a mistake? How could I have done such damage? And the sins of our past, for some of us, they take over our conception of ourselves, the way we see ourselves. We identify with them. And then we tell ourselves, well, yes, of course, we deserve to suffer because we are irreparably damaged. The great Hasidic master, Chadushi Arim, writes, if a person has committed a serious sin and continuously focus on what he has done wrong, he is in fact thinking all the time only of this act. And where a person's thoughts are, there he is, thinking of their sinful act. If a person focuses on this and the mud and the muck into which they have fallen, one who thinks about muck will remain in the muck. What does God gain from that? While thinking of sin, he could be stringing pearls, adding something positive to the kingdom of heaven. But that's the problem many of us have. We replay our mistakes over and over. We get trapped in the loop of thinking, I could have done it better. Why did I make this mistake? Why did I do it wrong? And sometimes, mistakenly, we even think that this is positive. But it's not. Aldous Huxley once said, rolling in the muck is not the best way to get clean. Bailey Newman says, we do not need to beat ourselves up. Life does that more than enough for us. Now, of course, if we do something wrong, we have to do teshuvah. We have to repent. We have to take responsibility for it. We have to compensate. We have to ask for forgiveness, and we have to do it with honesty and humility and with sincerity. But once we do teshuvah, we need to learn to forgive ourselves. And this will help us answer the original question of the Kotzk. Because the Kotzk says, why is it that a person who is hayarei min ho'avero shebiyado, a person who is afraid of the sins that are in their hand, the Kotzk says, not every person who sinned left the battlefield. Not every person who committed any sin felt that perhaps they had lesser merits to survive the battle. They were not exempted. It refers to a person who had sinned and the sin is in their hand. The sin is still before them. They have not processed this. They have not been able to go through a process of teshuvah, and then they have not been able to forgive themselves. They are still obsessed with their past transgressions. The sin is still biyado. The sin is still in their hand. And that's when that person would be distracted and lower the morale of the others and must be removed from battle. Rabbi Abdallah Somech was one of the great rabbinic leaders of the Iraqi Jewish community in the 1800s. Once a man came to him in tears, tell him about the sins he had committed, the troubles that he has, and he asked the rabbi for advice. The rabbi asked him for the details of the story, and the man told him the story. And then finally the man said, and because of this, this happened and this happened, I did this. And the man said, I have no hope. And the rabbi looked at him and said, and? Man didn't understand. The man said, there's no and. Here's where my story ends. And the rabbi said, and? And the man still didn't understand. The rabbi explained, when does the story end? When you decide to end it. You can talk about sin. You can talk about the mistakes that you've made. But then you can talk about how do you rectify it? How do you give compensation? How do you ask for forgiveness? How do you come back closer to God? When a story appears over, it is always possible to add a new ending. And the secret is the word and. It opens a new vista. It instructs us that the story can continue. We can't change past facts, but we can change what they mean, and we can change their effect on our lives going forward. We can always continue to write a new chapter. At a time of distress, at a time of remembering our mistakes and shortcomings, the connecting word and makes it possible not to get stuck in place, but rather to be able to continue with our story. So as the sin is not still biyado, in my hand. The word and is the essence of Yom Kippur. Because with and, we need not remain trapped. We need not remain mired in the muck of our mistakes. We need to decide, and we should do it now, to add to, and that every part of our life that disappoints us, that we feel that we did not live up to our expectations, we need to decide that we're going to write a new ending. We need to decide how to be able to do teshuvah sincerely, forgive ourselves just as we forgive others, and just as God forgives us. My friends, I wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.